Hi, everyone, and welcome to Module 2. For this module, we are looking at and discussing the topics of the integumentary system and the musculoskeletal system. So for this unit, we are looking at chapters 4, 5, and 10. So let's get into them. Starting with chapter 4, we're talking about body structures. Now, this does not necessarily relate to the integumentary system or the musculoskeletal system. However, it is an important chapter for you to read and understand because it talks about the structure and function of the organization of the human body. And that's going to help you not only learn the terms that are associated with the body structures, but also things like anatomical positions, planes of the body cavities, and quadrants. The chapter also will discuss diseases and conditions associated with the disease process, as well as some medical, surgical, and diagnostic procedures. So these are all really important things to help you not only learn the education and the content behind it, but it will also help you for some homework assignments this week. So as we get into chapter 4, the first thing that we talk about is levels of organization. The body is made up of several levels of organization and structure, as well as function. The first level that we have are called cells. Now, these are the smallest structural and functional units of life. Cells have many shapes and sizes, but they share three main parts: a cell membrane, a cytoplasm, and a nucleus. Cytology is the study of the body at the cellular level. So if you break that medical terminology down, cytology, so cyto, C-Y-T-O, means cell, and then ology is the study of. So study of the cellular body. When you have a group of cells that perform a specialized activity together, we call those tissues. There are more than 200 cell types of in the body, and they compose four major tissues: epithelial, connective, muscular, and nervous. When you have a group of tissues working together, they form a organ. So at least two or more tissue types have to be working together in order to create an organ. When you get a group of organs working together, they create an organ system. So for example, you have things like your cardiovascular system, your gastrointestinal system, your respiratory or pulmonology system, your integumentary system, your musculoskeletal systems. And when you get a group of systems working together, they create the highest level of organization, an organism. And an organism is a complete living entity capable of independent existence. Now, one thing that we do want to talk about is the anatomical position. So this is a body structure or body posture used to locate all parts of the body or divisions of the body. For the anatomical position, it is standing erect or upright, face forward, arms at your side, palms forward. That is what we call our anatomical position. Now, with the anatomical position, it does help us to define the planes of our body. The most common planes of your body are your mid-sagittal, your coronal, and your transverse. The mid-sagittal, see if I can highlight this here for you. The mid-sagittal is this one here that will break the body into the left and right halves. So right down the middle makes your left and right half. The coronal or frontal plane, which is this guy here, We'll divide the body into anterior, which is the front or ventral, and the posterior, which is your dorsal or your backside. Then the final one is the transverse plane, which is also called our horizontal plane. And this divides the body into superior, which is top, and inferior, which is bottom. The planes of your body also help to create body cavities, and body cavities are spaces within the body that help to protect, separate, and support internal organs. Each of the two major cavities consist of two smaller cavities. We have our dorsal or posterior cavity, which will include your cranial and spinal nerves and spinal cavities, and the ventral or anterior cavity, which includes your thoracic and abdominal pelvic cavity. Now, one other thing that we do is we will break the abdominal pelvic cavity into quadrants and regions. These are used to describe the location of many abdominal and pelvic organs more easily. The abdominal pelvic cavity will be divided into 4 quadrants with 2 imaginary lines that form a cross at the midsection of the lower torso. The quadrants are called the upper and lower quadrants. So I know this picture is a little hard to see, but what we're looking at is this guy right here. So upper and lower quadrants, upper, lower, and then we have a right side and a left side. So then you have a right upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, right left upper quadrant, left lower quadrant. Then what we can do is then break the body and the abdominal pelvic cavity into regions. And there are 9 regions, but there are 3 main parts to those regions. We have the hypochondriac, which is the upper, the umbilical, which is the middle, and the inguinal, which is the lower. And then from there you have a right, a left, and a middle. Now, these are some additional directional terms that you should know and be aware of. These are located in these help us to locate the positions of structures, surfaces, and regions of the body. And they are relative again to that anatomical position. So I would highly recommend going into chapter 4, finding table 4-5, and making flashcards, or at least having a good knowledge of these directional terms. Moving on, let's talk about chapter 5, which is your integumentary system. So the integumentary system is made up of skin and accessory organs, such as your hair, nails, and glands. The skin covers and protects all outer surfaces of the body and performs many vital functions, such as the sense of touch. The skin consists of 2 layers, the epidermis layer and the dermis layer. The epidermis layer is the outermost layer of skin. So if you break that medical term down, epi is a prefix, EPI, that stands for outer, and dermis refers to skin. So then your second layer is the dermis layer, and that falls just under the epidermis layer. The accessory organs of skin, like the glands, hair, and nails, all serve a major function as well. Glands will play an important role in defending the body against disease and maintaining homeostasis. There are 2 important glands that are located in the dermis layer, and they produce secretions. Those 2 glands are called sweat glands or sebaceous glands. And sebaceous glands are also called oil glands. Hair is found on nearly all parts of the body, except for areas like the lips, nipples, palms of the hands, soles of the feet, and certain parts of the external genitalia. The visible part of hair is called the hair shaft, and the embedded part in the dermis layer is called the root. Nails will protect the tips of your finger and your toes from bruising and injury. Each nail is formed in the nail root, and then as the nail grows, it stays attached and then slides forward over the nail bed. Now, one of the other really important pieces that you need to be aware of is when we talk about the integumentary or skin, is you have to be able to determine different types of burns. And the reason that is these are going to be the most common or the most harmful thing to the integumentary system itself. Burns are tissue injuries that are caused by direct contact with chemicals, thermal, electrical, or radioactive agents. Burns are classified as first, second, or third degree. First degree burns are also called superficial burns. These are the least serious of all the types because they injure only the top layer of skin. They are mostly caused by brief contact with dry or moist heat, too much time in the sun, or an exposure to chemicals. Second degree burns are also called partial thickness burns, and they are deep burns that cause damage to the epidermis layer as well as part of the dermis layer. They are caused by contact with flames, hot liquids, or chemicals. Symptoms will mimic that of a first degree burn. However, the second degree burn also has fluid-filled blisters. Third degree burns are also called full thickness burns. In this type of burn, the epidermis and the dermis layer are destroyed, and some of the underlying connective tissues are damaged. These may be caused by corrosive chemicals, flames, electricity, or extremely hot objects. And to wrap up this discussion, we're going to talk about Chapter 10, which is discussing the musculoskeletal system. This system functions to support the body and provide movement of the body parts and organs. It is made up of the muscles, bones, joints, and related structures like tendons and connective tissue. So let's go into those. Let's talk about muscles first. Muscles are composed of contractive cells or fibers that provide movement of an organ or a body part. Muscles contribute to the posture of our posture. They will produce body heat and act as a protective covering for internal organs. Muscles make up the bulk of your body, and there are three types of muscles in our body: skeletal muscles, cardiac muscles, and smooth muscles. Skeletal muscles are also called your voluntary or striated muscles. They are muscles that are under voluntary control. So things, for example, like the bones in your arms and in your legs. Cardiac muscles are only found in the heart and related to cardiac or the heart pumping. Smooth muscle is also called involuntary or visceral muscles. They are muscles whose action are involuntary. So for example, those that are found in your GI tract to help digest food, or your respiratory tract to inflate your lungs for air and oxygen consumption. Bones provide the framework of our body, protect internal organs, store calcium and other minerals, and produce blood cells within our bone marrow. There are 206 individual bones in the human adult body. Together with soft tissue, most vital organs are enclosed and protected by bones. But it isn't just support and protection. The skeletal system also carries out a number of other important functions. Movement is possible because of bones that provide points of attachment to muscle, tendons, or ligaments. There are 4 types of bones that we have in our body. The first are short bones, which you can see right here. Short bones are somewhat cube-shaped, and they consist of a core of spongy bone. For example, you'll find these bones in your wrists, ankles, and toes. Next, we have irregular bones. Irregular bones are ones that cannot be classified as short or long because of their complex shapes. So we see these typically in the bones in our vertebrae or spine, as well as those in our middle ear. Next, we have flat bones. Flat bones are exactly what their name suggests. They provide a broad surface for muscular attachment or protection of internal organs. So for example, those that are found in your skull, shoulder blade, and sternum. Then last but not least, we have our long bones. Long bones are found in your appendages, so things like your arms, legs, and fingers. When we talk about bones, we also have to talk about bone fractures. So a broken bone and a fractured bone are exactly the same. That term is synonymous. There are different types of fractures and they are classified by the extent of the damage. As you can see on the screen here, there are 8 different types. The first type is a closed fracture. This is one in which the bone is broken, but no external wound exists. The second type is an open fracture. So this involves a broken bone and an external wound that leads to the site of the fracture. Number 3 is a complicated fracture. This is one in which the bone has broken and the injury is to an internal organ, such as when a broken rib pierces things like your lungs. Number 4 is a comminuted fracture. This is when the bone is broken or splintered into pieces. Number 5 is an impacted fracture. This occurs when a bone is broken on one end and wedged into the interior of another bone. Number 6 is an incomplete fracture. This occurs when the line of a broken bone does not extend through the entire thickness of the bone, so that one side of the bone is broken, but the other side is just bent. This is also very common in children, as part of the bone is still composed of flexible cartilage, and we often refer to these as green stick fractures. Lastly, we have a Colles fracture. This is a break at the lower end of the radius in your wrist, occurring just above where the wrist actually is. Another way that we discuss this is a foosh, a F-O-O-S-H, fall on outstretched hand. All right, I want to give you guys a minute to do a little activity of matching. So here we have some common word roots, and I've given you 10 options. I'm going to give you a minute. I would tell you at this point, go ahead and pause the video so that way you can take a guess at these. And then on the next screen, I will give you the answers. So go ahead and hit pause. All right, hopefully you did hit pause. So here are your answers. Again, go ahead and hit pause and make sure that you are correct in your answers. All right, last thing I want to do is talk about your homework for this week. So the first thing that we have is your discussion board on successes and challenges. Please remember that initial discussion posts are due on Tuesday. So Tuesday, April 11th, your initial posting will be due. And your reply post to at least one classmate, preferably 2, is due on Saturday, April 15th. This week you will have your first dictation assignment, and it is meant to help you with verbal communication. Being able to understand verbal communication is very important in a healthcare setting and medical terminology. For this activity, you will need to listen and interpret what you hear. You're going to be given 2 patient scenarios which contain multiple terms that you have been studying this week. After listening to the summaries, you will answer questions corresponding to what you heard. You have 1 attempt at this assignment and it is 10 questions long. The nice thing is that there is no time limit, so you can take as much time as you need, re-listen to the patient scenarios as many times as you need to answer the questions. You'll also have your first course project for the week. So for this course project, you are working with something called clinical notes. You will be presented with the clinical notes for 2 different patients. You will review the progress notes for the patient, which are written as SOAP notes. SOAP is an acronym that stands for subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. Each of these components is used to record vital parts of the patient's record. A subjective will include the patient's complaints and state the patient's symptoms in their own words. Objective includes information that the provider can measure, such as vital signs, weight, or findings from a physical examination. Assessment includes a differential diagnosis or a summary of signs and symptoms. Plan will include treatments performed, follow-up appointment information, referrals, or any other orders. After you have reviewed the clinical notes, you will download the Module 2 course project assignment template, which is a Microsoft Word document. You will fill in your answers on that worksheet, and when you are finished, you will submit your worksheet for grading. There are 21 questions to be completed, along with a place to put your references when you use them. You'll have your second quiz, again, 20 questions, 20 minutes, 1 attempt. And lastly, you'll have your live classroom assignment, which you will attend or watch the recording of your live lecture, and then you will be able to answer the questions. All right, guys, that is what I have for you. I hope that you all have a wonderful week too, and I will see you at your live lecture. Bye, everyone.